Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. It's wonderful to see a full council chamber. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask if there's a disclosure of pecuniary interest from anyone. Seeing none, going to report out of closed session. Got a motion by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Zimmerman. The Council of Town of Minto receives the closed session report regarding the third-party information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could significantly prejudice a competitive position or interfere with negotiations as information. Further, that council approves the confidential direction to staff. All in favor of that motion? Carried, thank you. So I'm going to ask anybody that's speaking, come to the mic, because we do have a couple of delegations. State your name. And if there's questions, stay at the mic until question period is, or until the questions are over. Okay, so I've got a motion moved by Councillor Potnovich, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the minutes of the Town of Minto, September 3rd, 2024 closed session meeting and September 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting be approved. All in favor of that motion? Carried, thank you. So we have a court of revision this evening. Got a motion to move into court of revision. Moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Zimmerman, that the Council of the Town of Minto convene into court of revision. All in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you.
At this time, Mayor Turton, I would ask that the other council members excuse themselves from their seats, and it would just be Councillor Elliott, Deputy Mayor Anderson, and yourself who are a part of the court of revision. Councillor Potnovich, if you could leave your seat. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to pass it to our to Annaline.
Sorry. Thank you. Yep. So it's called to order at 7:03 p.m. And what I'm looking for is a motion to appoint a chair to the Court of Revision for the Municipal Drain 120.
I would so move that Mayor Turton become our chair.
So that Dave Turton is hereby appointed as chair to the Court of Revision for Municipal Drain 120. You second the motion?
Oh, certainly, yes.
That's carried. And then Chair Turton can take over.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Purpose and the background information. The purpose of the Court of Revision tonight is to hear appeals to the schedule of assessment for Minto Drain number 14, located on lot 6 and 7, concessions 8 and 9, Town of Minto, County of Wellington. And the following are attached to the agenda: Court of Revision jurisdiction, notice of sitting of Court of Revision, and the drainage report. So appeals. Annaline, do we have any written appeals this
We
evening?
have no written appeals at all.
So is there anybody in the council chambers tonight wishing to speak to this drain 14? Seeing none. Trevor, is Trevor here?
He's
Trevor's on, okay, sorry. Trevor Kipfer, is there anything Streamline Engineering? There's no appeals. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there's no appeals. There's really not much to talk about. So the court shall issue its decision.
Through you, if I can,
Go
Chair
ahead.
Turton. We would need a mover and a seconder that the Court of Revision accepts the assessment for Municipal Drain 14 as presented.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. All in favor of that motion? That's carried, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting. You folks mind coming back, please? Thank you. Short and sweet. Okay. Resolution moved by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Potnovich, that the town of Minto, sorry, I've already done that. We're into delegations.
Sorry, no, through you, that the Town of Minto Court of Revision convenes into committee of the whole.
Okay, so I was right. Pardon me. I'm going to start again. This is something we do once every 3 or 4 years.
We don't do Court of Revision very
No.
often.
So I apologize for my doziness. So moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Potnovich, that the town of Minto Court of Revision convenes into committee of the whole. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, so we have no public meetings, but we do have a delegation. I'd like to welcome Palmerston Curling Club delegation. We're going to discuss the provincial elementary school curling championships. Got Christy Snyder, Linda Shoemaker, and Jill Dan to present the delegation. So, welcome.
All right. Thank you, councillors, again, for extending your invitation for us to join you again this evening to address some of the questions regarding the Elementary Curling Championship. So it's been a couple months, so I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Christy Schneider. I'm the current president of the Curling Club. I'm a junior curling coach, and I'm co-chair of the Elementary Curling Championship Committee. I'm also a mom whose kids have participated in the Elementary Curling Championship in the past, and my kids are ecstatic to get to be able to be part of the host club this coming spring. So like mentioned, joining me is Linda, Jill, and Paula. They're all dedicated and valuable volunteers within the curling club, and they're also involved in the organization of the elementary spiel. Just to quickly refresh and to address some of the questions that were made at the August Council meeting, the Elementary Championship is a provincial event for youth in grades 1 through 8. The event does travel throughout Ontario, and the Palmerston Curling Club was the successful bidder to host the 2025 event. Though not impossible, this will most likely be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Palmerston Club. The championship runs from Thursday, April the 3rd to Sunday, April 6th. The request to have access to the arena surface beginning Sunday, March 30th is to allow time to transform the arena ice into a 4-sheet curling venue. Along with the curling club side, this would give us 8 sheets of playing surface under one roof to host up to 64 teams from across Ontario. This venue setup mirrors a very successful elementary curling championship event hosted by Chesley in 2017. The Chesley facility is similar to Palmerston, where the arena, community center, and curling club is all under one roof. Facilities as such create a unique experience and a unified atmosphere for the participants and spectators. The transformation of the hockey to curling ice from Sunday to Wednesday will largely be taken care of by our ice making team. These individuals are Curling Canada trained and are certified curling ice technicians. They are highly knowledgeable, skilled, and efficient at their job. Members of our ice making team were also instrumental in the ice transformation at the Chesley event. For this reason, and as mentioned in the letter you received, the assistance required from the town staff during the ice making period will be fairly minimal, other than initial scraping and monitoring of the ice plants. The event itself, as it runs from Thursday through to Sunday, will be orchestrated by our amazing club and community volunteers, and we request support from the town for cleaning and maintenance during this period. I hope you all had a chance to look at the sponsorship letter that outlines the sponsorship opportunities for this event. Support from our community businesses and individuals will be a key component, not only in the success of this event, but also at keeping this event affordable for those participating. As mentioned, a large amount of our budget is allocated towards the preparation of the arena surface. We essentially require all the equipment and resources needed to create a second curling facility. So this includes the white paint to create a blank template, paint to paint the rings and the line markings, the jet ice water treatment tanks to condition the water, scrapers and pebbling equipment to perfect the curling surface, and rocks to play the game. The timing of this event falls at the end of a typical curling season, so we will be able to rent some of this extra curling equipment from local clubs, which in turn supports other clubs in the community. The sponsorship committee is mindful of the financial magnitude of our request. Sponsorship in kind support from the town of Minto for the use of the arena and community center facilities will help to alleviate some of the total expenses that we will incur. Your in-kind sponsorship will allow us to direct other sponsorship dollars towards other parts of the event, such as the opening ceremonies, the printed material, prizes, and meal vouchers for our volunteers, just to name a few examples. It also takes quite a bit of pressure off our community businesses and individuals who already contribute so much to other organizations and events happening throughout the town of Minto. As a partner in our event, the town of Minto will receive substantial recognition in the time leading up to and during the events. Aside from our sponsorship dollars, an entry fee will be charged to participate. It is important to us as a committee that this be an affordable price point for teams. Teams traveling from a distance will be incurring extra expenses for accommodations, fuel, meals, etc., and we don't wish to deter a team from participating in our event. As mandated by Curling Ontario, since we are not a Scotties or a tankard event, we are unable to charge a door admission as a source of revenue. This allows us to promote our sport and allow anyone to support the event without cost. We plan to offer 50-50 and raffle prizes as additional sources of income. Food booth will be available during the duration of the event, and we hope to involve other community service clubs or organizations to help us in this respect. We can truly make this a community event. We are confident that through the commitment of our volunteers, participants, and community partners, we can make this a successful event, not only for the Palmerston Curling Club, but also for the town of Minto businesses and community. This event is a great opportunity to have a positive impact on local tourism and services, and as Councillor Elliott mentioned, to put a feather in the town of Minto's cap. As mentioned during our initial delegation in June, excess funds that may be raised will be directed towards the betterment of the Palmerston Junior Curling Program, which has seen exceptional growth and participation over the past 5+ years. It will also be directed towards the club's reserve fund to help cover our share of any costs for future facility equipment upgrades. The organizers from the Chesley event, as well as this past season's host Stroud, have been great to share the successes and challenges from their events, as well as some budget figures. We also have considerable involvement from our junior curling parents whose kids have participated in this event in the past. This gives our organizing committee a different perspective on what did and what didn't work well from the participants' point of view. In closing, we have the opportunity to host a unique youth event in the town of Minto. Curling is a sport that may be a little untraditional and a little unknown to some, but it's a sport that continues to gain popularity and can be made adaptable for all ages and abilities. Our dedicated volunteers are passionate about the opportunity to host, and we are excited to create a memorable event. I hope we've been able to address some of your questions and concerns, and we would welcome any further questions you may have.
Thank you, Chrissy. Go ahead, Councillor Elliott, or other questions?
Yeah, I guess it's no secret that I agree with what we're doing here. Participants, like how many people are participating? The kids that are.
So our goal is to host 64 teams. So 64 teams times 4 players, 4 to 5 players per team. So
I'm glad you can add because I can't.
Over 300 participants plus spectators, families, what have you.
Families and chaperones, you're going to have
Absolutely.
a huge number of people influxed into the town of Minto.
Yes.
Certainly in Palmerston, and probably use our restaurants and shopping and whatever they do in their off time. So it's phenomenal that we got the opportunity to do that. I don't know how you applied for it or why we got awarded the chance to do this, but I believe our town should support it 100%.
Thank you.
Councillor Potnowitz, I see your hand up.
Yes, through you, Mayor. You said you had a similar event in Chesley. You give me an idea what revenue and expenses were for that?
I myself was not involved in that event, but and I don't have an exact figure of what they made, but they were successful in that event, raising money for their club.
Other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Zimmerman.
So, I mean, I hate to look at the dark side of things, but you're asking the taxpayers from all of Minto to give in kind a donation. And I'm struggling to find the benefit for the whole town. When this is being held strictly in Palmerston, when we have a curling rink in Hairston, which is all set up, ready to go, I just don't understand why we aren't using the two of them.
Oh, that's fair. I guess one of the goals of our committee was to create a unique experience for those that were participating. Kind of going off the backbone of the Chesley event where it was one venue. That's kind of where we've drawn our inspiration. Just from being a participant in this past year's event, for example, the event was hosted at 3 different curling clubs. So Stroud, Alliston, and Cookstown. So you had teams that were playing at all the different clubs, and it didn't just seem like a very unified event. We didn't know what was going on at the other clubs. The kids weren't necessarily together. And we just feel that if we can have this event under one roof, we have the community center, we have the 2 ice surfaces, we can create a unified event for the participants and create a memorable experience. I think kids that are in curling, I guess I'll just speak for my kids as an example. They're so excited to play like on arena ice. And it's a totally different experience rather than playing in a curling club. So if we can create a Briar style experience for these kids, I think we'll continue to instill a love of the game for them as they continue on in their young careers.
One other thing.
Go ahead, Councillor Zimmerman.
Through you, Mayor Turton, I did do some research on the Ontario curling site and looked at the bio for this year, your intended event, and not once did it mention the town of Minto. It was all strictly Palmerston, and that's really bothersome. Like, you're asking the whole town to pay for this, but yet it's strictly Palmerston, and I have a struggle with that. I'm sorry.
And that's maybe something we should do better on our part, is to say that it is a town of Minto community event and that it's not just strictly the Palmerston Curling Club. We can bring benefits to the town.
Other questions? Go ahead, Councillor.
Another comment. We're talking dollars that really aren't dollars. We're giving you a facility that's going to be up and running anyway. The hydro is going to be running. We're going to keep ice in, and at that time, we're probably pretty well through with minor ball and skating and such like. So most of the time it would sit idle. So we're not really giving you $6,000. We're just giving you the cost of the hydro and the cost of the ice machine. Anybody that needed that facility for that weekend will probably book it at another time anyway. So we will get those bookings back if they're booking. So,
And we did keep that in mind when we were scheduling the dates of our event, that we wouldn't conflict with any hockey tournaments or anything like that. So it is the end of the ice season. And yes, we kind of view this as another opportunity to use the facilities that are available in the town.
And speaking to the Palmerston, Harrison, Clifford, Palmerston hasn't got a restaurant. So where are the people going to eat? Over to Harrison, out to Tivadale, maybe to Clifford. All our facilities are going to be used, and so I don't see that as an argument. Thanks.
Other questions? Chrissy, what about donation box at the door? Is that legal?
I guess that's something that we would have to look into. Like I had mentioned, because of the nature of the event, Curling Ontario does not allow us to charge an
Yep.
admission fee.
Mhm.
So maybe a donation box would be something that we could potentially look into. I guess that would be a similar similar idea to going out and asking for sponsorships as well, perhaps.
And I'm pretty certain that there'll be lots of, I mean, I agree with you, Chrissy. It's very unique. It's a situation where a bunch of young people get to do something where a lot of other kids would want to do. And you and the Palmerston Curling Club and your volunteers are making that available for them.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think that's great. And I hope you're not thinking that you're selling this to us tonight. What you're here to do is explain it to us. And so hope you don't feel like you're on the hot seat.
Oh, no, not at all.
So, so, oh, Gord's not here.
No,
Sorry.
he has left.
Yeah, okay. So I think I understood. So just so everybody's clear, what Councillor Elliott said was, we're not giving you $6,000. We're allowing you to use the ice surface and our facilities free.
Correct.
That's exactly what you're asking.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. I'd also like to, I guess, stress the point that from the Sunday to the Wednesday and those hours leading up to preparation of the events, that's entirely on our part. We don't require help from town staff necessarily to help prepare the ice. That's all done by our group of volunteers to prepare for that. So as far as town employee time, I guess there's not going to be as much requirement for that for the days leading up to it. And then during the event is where we require some help with the cleaning and maintenance and what have you as required.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Our staff are going to be there anyway.
Yes.
So whether
Yeah.
you're there or whether you're not, they're scheduled to work.
Mhm.
So
I mean, we have done this before. I mean, we do have money in our budget for donations. But you're really not asking for that. You're asking for our facilities, which we have had all Ontario hockey teams, broomball teams, maybe not broomball teams, but, and we've had to extend our ice schedule for that. And pretty certain that the team that was doing well and extending into April weren't coming to us and asking us if they could do that. Yep, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. Sorry to get you involved, but
No, thanks, Mayor Turton. So certainly just with some of the different sports groups and teams that we have, depending on how their playoff structure is formatted, 81s, that went into April. OMHA playdowns, the tournaments, those sometimes go into April. And if a team is good enough from Minto to qualify, then it's nice that they can have some extra ice time to practice and try and put their best foot forward at those events. So extending the ice season into April is not something that it's not that we've not done it before. So it's certainly something that we're willing to do this time around as well.
okay. How do we proceed? I guess you want to help us a little bit?
Through you, Mayor Turton, I think the question may here be if you're looking at, providing the whole, which was at a value of I believe, $6,000, which was a report made by Matthew Lubers, or if you're looking at the request letter that they sent, whereas, say, a gold sponsor would be $2,500, which, could be in facility credit or something like that, or that's up to council to make that decision. I know that the budget is set at $4,000 for facility credit at this time within your current budget, if that's helpful.
Presently, are you saying presently we have 4,000 allocated for facility help? Can you help us with that, Matt? Have you talked with our treasurer about this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Turton. So the facility donation budget line is something that's established annually. So for 2024, there's $4,000 that was allocated to that. Two events, the Life Outdoor Show was 1,500. There was a charity hockey game for about 400. So we're about halfway to utilizing it for this year. And then through the budget process for 2025, we can reestablish that amount at 4,000. We can increase it, we can decrease it. That's a council decision through budget deliberations for next year.
Okay. Somebody want to make the motion?
I could make a
That we
motion.
go ahead and put that on the budget line for 2024, whatever's left in our policy, whatever's left to be able to donate. And then we consider 2025 in the budget for the rest. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Elliott.
Oh, yeah.
Would you please make, are you making the
Okay,
motion?
I just didn't know whether you,
I'm just coming up with a
Okay.
motion, if you just give me a second. The council of the town of Minto provide a $6,000 budget line item for 2025 donations through the community services budget, and further that the amount left this, and further that a $6,000 credit be provided to the curling club. Is that what you're kind of looking for? Is that the
Mhm.
way that you're wanting this to read?
Okay, were you okay with that, CAO Courtney? Yeah.
I struggle a bit because that 6,000 really isn't reality. That's what, well, I'll make that motion that we provide the facility for the curling weekend, or I guess it's more than a weekend,
A week?
for the week.
So I think what we're trying to do here is we've got a group of volunteers stepping up and saying, we're going to host this event. You guys have already committed to it.
We have.
And
The event's going to happen.
you're asking us for our support. So can I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. So does everybody understand what the motion is? We're going to support them. Go ahead, Councillor Dirksen.
I just had a question. I'm assuming here, but I don't want to do that because things happen. But so that would make us a platinum sponsor then. Is that what
The
would
platinum
happen
sponsor
then?
is 5,000 plus.
Yes, that is correct. You would be
Okay.
recognized, the town of Minto would be recognized as a platinum sponsor, as according to our sponsorship program, and have the benefits of the platinum sponsor.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you. Just want
thank
to
you.
make sure that would happen. Thank you.
Yes.
Everybody understand the motion? Then I'm going to call the question. Okay, all in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck. I mean, if, I know that you know who you have to go to get the town's help. So, good luck. Sorry that was so onerous. So if you guys want to stay for the rest of the meeting, that's terrific. If you want to leave now, that's fine too. But we're going to move along to our next delegation. So thank you for coming. Our next delegation is Chris Clark and Lindsay Scott. They're going to present the flood mitigation report. So welcome, Chris and Lindsay. This is something that's been on the books for a long time, and it's going to be an education for us. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Turton and councillors. Thanks for having us here tonight to discuss this very important topic in the community. With us tonight is Bill White. I believe he's on Zoom. Yeah, and Bill will be speaking to we thought it was important that we brought Bill as an employee of ours, of Triton. Bill lived through some of this, and he can touch on the background aspect of for the benefit of the group here tonight.
Welcome, Bill. Sorry I didn't acknowledge you, but welcome.
Thank you.
So, and then Lindsay and I will speak to the technical aspect of the update to the Harrison flood mitigation study and design. So without further ado, I'll let Bill start and go from there.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening to you, Mayor Turton, and members of council and staff, members of the public. If someone could possibly move the slide as we go, I'll try and mention when I'm finished with each one. I'm hoping to be very brief so that you can get into a deep dive with the engineers about the next stages of this project. The first slide, entitled Harrison Flood Mitigation Study, December 2020, was when I believe it was the previous council approved the document. That document began after the 2017 Harrison storm, which I'm sure many of you will remember and experienced. That event was about a 1 in 100 year event. And at the time, it was characterized as about 7 inches of rain in 7 hours. As you probably know, Harrison's flooded many times in its history. And there had been a number of studies done by the town of Harrison Council in the past and work done with the Conservation Authority, and progress made. Rail beds were removed, bridges were reconstructed with higher elevations. The trailer park that used to be beside the Harrison Community Center was removed. And then after this major event, council initiated the flood mitigation study. That study was taken through a public process with presentations at the beginning, during the study, and at the end. It began with 13 scenarios to look at how flooding at the Maitland of the Harrison by the Maitland could be resolved. 3 key parts of that were to look above stream of Harrison, inside Harrison, and below stream of Harrison. And one of the things I found fascinating about this was how much benefit could be achieved by doing work downstream of Harrison. So if we could move to the next slide, entitled Harrison Flood Mitigation Study, again, background. The study was done based on a 2018 watershed planning document that was in place in Ontario at that time. I'm not entirely sure the same document exists, but the methodology with the 3 phases is still consistent, and the engineers can talk about the benefits of using that methodology, because I think, having done that work, it's positioning the town well for the Class EA process that is to come. There were 5 shortlisted solutions that emerged out of the entire study. The first one was to do nothing. The second one was to just do downstream floodplain improvements. The third one was to do downstream river channel improvements. The fourth one was to do river channel improvements in the town itself. And the fifth one was to bypass Harrison bypass the Maitland River out of Harrison, so that the high end flows would not impact on the community itself. Alternative 4 was eventually removed from the study. That involved the Harrison conduit. The Harrison conduit is basically a giant culvert, concrete structure that goes under Laura Street, and above it, most of you would know Tannery Park is there. The project to replace that, enlarge it, is going to be quite punitive, expensive in the future. And so it has been removed from the 2020 study. On the next slide, I mentioned the format that was to be used based on provincial guidelines for the study. It involves setting visions, goals, objectives, and targets. And just a few of them listed there. For 2025, the plan called for starting the environmental and engineering approvals, which part of the reason for the engineers being here tonight is to talk to you about those approvals. By 2027, remove up to 24 properties from the regional floodplain. I believe that's phase 2 or phase 3 work, or combinations of both. By 2035, removing additional properties, and then prepare the river diversion before 2040. The river diversion, as it was characterized in the study, would maintain a flow of the stream through Harriston. It would be naturalized and could be part of a park system. And there would be some form of storage above Harriston, and the river would be diverted somewhere between Ron Faulkner's farm and the urban limits of the town of Harriston. In addition to the diversion, there would be complete floodplain mapping done for the whole watershed, which incidentally extends all the way up into parts of Mount Forest. So it's quite a very broad area that brings water into what has been called the bottom of the bathtub in Harriston. The plan also called for securing federal and provincial funding. The next slide talks about recommended next steps. As I mentioned, the flood mitigation study was broadly considered by the public during the process, after the process, and was approved by the previous council. There is a bit of a financial plan in the document and quite a bit of financial work done behind the scenes to try and see if it was realistic to reach the total project cost, just without being committed to figures. To do the whole project, including the river diversion, you were somewhere in the vicinity of 35 to 40 million. Who knows when it gets around to 2040 what that might be then, but we had to look at how funds could be raised to plan for that eventual work. Bulk of the money will need to come from provincial and federal grants. The town could begin by putting some money aside in the property tax regularly. There are partnerships that could be looked at. As I mentioned, it involves Wellington North to some degree. There's a structure that the county of Wellington owns. And of course, there are members of the watershed that all contribute to the 2 municipal drains that run in this area. I should mention briefly, and I won't be too much longer, that there are 2 municipal drains below Harriston that were initially thought to be a good source of funding and project approvals for this work. As we got looking at this, once it was approved, and looking at the changes that have been made to the class environmental assessment process, and looking at some of the case law that's come out of Drainage Act work, I think the engineering team, the staff, and the Conservation Authority are coming to the conclusion that a Class EA approach would probably be the best way of going about it. The good news is that much of the work done in the flood mitigation strategy or study will be beneficial to what has to go into the EA. I believe that's my last slide. The next one, I think, has to do with work that's been done since 2019. Now, I can handle that one, Chris, or if you wish to.
Sure, go ahead, Bill.
So after the flood occurred in 2017, I know Public Works did get out into the area below Harriston and cleaned a lot of the trees and other debris that was downstream. I don't recall exactly how much of a benefit it was, but it was it's not a large percentage reduction in floodplain, but it's some. So if you think of this as kind of a risk management approach, that amount of work did reduce the risk of having a flood impact from storms not quite as high as 1 in 100 years. In 2020, there was a backflow prevention device installed on the northboard drain outlet to the Maitland River. I don't know if you're familiar with backflow preventers. Where a pipe carries water out into the river, it allows the flow to go quite easily without, if it's not blocked by high water. This backflow preventer would shut the pipe down and stop the water from the river as it rises from discharging up that pipe and back into the George Street area. That is something that Triton, in some of its earlier studies, found happened pretty quickly in storms much smaller than 1 in 100 year events. In 2021, 2022, council directed that there would be meetings with the 2 landowners that are impacted by alternatives 2 and 3. And my understanding that there was work done in design and that was shared with these owners and discussions were held. I believe there's still more discussions to hold with these owners. And then in 2024, the preliminary design report was prepared by Triton, Henway Engineering, and that focused on alternatives 2 and 3, and that's the work below stream. And as I said, one of the interesting things that I thought came out of that was how much benefit there could be from channelizing work downstream. And so this is illustrated in this new work, a new study that Chris and Lindsay and the people from Headway have done. I think that is the end of my part.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Are you staying on to take questions if there is some? But I'm sure that we have other folks here that can answer those questions. Sorry. He said yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
we would
Yes.
invite, so just to, at this point in time, we'd invite any questions that anyone has on the background portion of the work done to date. And what Lindsay and I are presenting next is what the preliminary design report consisted of and the work done there through the National Disaster Mitigation Program, the NDMP funding, which is a provincial funding program. We will discuss that, but I wanted to cover any questions that anyone or clarification that anyone may need prior to us moving forward.
Okay, questions? Let's move
Perfect.
forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as Bill mentioned, as I just previously mentioned, as well as part of the NDMP funding, I think it was an intake 6, the town was successful in applying for with the assistance of Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, as well as Headway Engineering. We further investigated the preliminary design options to implement alternatives 2 and 3, which was to reduce the likelihood of flooding and backflow within the urban area of Harrison for the more frequent events. That would be your 10-year storms and your spring melts and that sort of those sort of events. So the spring melts in many cases would equate to a 10-year event or 25-year event in some cases, which we did see in February of 2018, a similar event that caused a spring melt, early spring melt, where we had a lot of a very mild week followed by a heavy rainfall. And what happens there is the ice that is still left in the hard surface acts exactly like pavement, so there's a lot more runoff in the spring melts. So we further investigated alternative 2 and 3 to come up with a preliminary design solution that would also contribute to the overall implementation of the ultimate goal consistent with the town strategic plan to implement the Harrison flood mitigation study, which is one of your goals in your strategic plan. I think that's important to point out. In following that and consistent with that study, to implement alternative 5, which is the Harrison bypass. And I can't stress enough that I know there's a lot of talk in the community because I've lived it and I've heard a lot of it. But the important part is that the bypass, the Harrison bypass, will not be moving the river around the town. The river will remain going through the town on a day-to-day basis. The bypass is simply designed to take events once they exceed a certain level that they will bypass and overflow and be diverted around the town. So on a day-to-day basis, the enjoyment of the river will still be in place. And that's the intended use, the intention of the design. But again, this is just looking at alternatives 2 and 3 downstream of the Arthur Street Bridge to the Highway 87 bridge, which complements the ultimate goal of the bypass. The bypass would then be further worked on under another Schedule C Class EA as consistent with the study as that study recommends, and but that would be for another day. We're starting with phase 1 of the phased approach. So the total estimated cost of implementing alternatives 2 and 3 in 2023-2024 values is approximately estimated at $6.5 million, and that includes all the capital work involved to implement that, as well as landowner or easement acquisitions and legal work required for that, as well as approvals and contracts and contingencies and engineering and whatnot. So, and then moving forward, what we're here today to do is, as Bill mentioned, the Harrison flood mitigation study originally that was adopted by council at the time in 2020 recommended the use of the Drainage Act, and through further works completed during the preliminary design, we've come to the conclusion that is not the most appropriate approach here, and that is because for 3 reasons, and I can explain. Public consultation is the first one. So public consultation, it's important. Most of the funding streams that you're seeing come through now in programs require Indigenous group consultation, agency consultation, and that is done through the Class EA process. It actually specifically asks if a class environmental assessment has been completed. So this would further strengthen your applications for federal and provincial funding in the future by taking the path of the Schedule C Class EA. Timeline is also a factor. Works through the Drainage Act, as you all know, can take a lot of time and resources, staff resources. And we have essentially done and completed all of the background work through the NDMP funding and the flood mitigation report, as well as the design report to, if I may say, put a bow on this whole project. And it's just a matter of compiling the information that's already been done. There's been archaeological studies, cultural heritage studies. All the studies that have been completed already can complement and work towards the environmental study report that has to be completed as part of the Schedule C Class EA. And then essentially we go through the motions of the public consultation process, and within 2025 you'd be completed, and then you could move forward with a plan which would have you shovel ready essentially for a final design. And then again, as I mentioned before, funding opportunities. This is going through the Class EA process is more advantageous to the town when applying for these types of programs that come out federal and provincial. Next slide. So this is just, we thought we should. It's we're talking engineering here, and it's not always the most. It's somewhat boring for people. So we provided a visual just for everyone to see. And this just shows you it's maybe a little difficult to see, but the red line with the implementation of the downstream alternative 2 and 3 works, which is channelizing the river and deepening, widening, and working on the floodplain would get you where the blue water is shown now is where the 5-year event would sit. Previous to that, or what is existing now, is in red in the outline. So there's a significant reduction in just the 5-year event on those which would be considered a minor storm by implementing this process of the $6.5 million. Next slide. So a cross section or a cross cut. This is another visual that shows you the outlet of the North Ward drain, currently at the bottom of Union Street and Margaret Street in Harriston. This is basically showing you the difference between the two as a way to measure. Right now, we are where it says existing. That is where the water level would sit today in a 10-year event. Whereas if we were to implement the works downstream, we would reduce the flood levels by a foot in a 10-year event alone. So that's significant because, as I mentioned before, coming back to the spring melts that we get and that we see is sometimes within that 10 to 25-year event window. So that they're more frequent, and they're happening more frequent now that we're finding with the effects of climate change. Next slide. So I'm going to let Lindsay take over here and discuss the next steps of the study.
In summary, the purpose of today's presentation was to update council on the status of the accomplishments to date as it relates to the town's strategic plan and specifically managing the town's infrastructure and caring for the environment through implementation of the Harriston Flood Mitigation Plan. Moving forward, we have shared the preliminary design report for council's acceptance for information. We would like to amend the flood mitigation strategy such that approval of alternatives 2 and 3 is now through the Schedule C Class EA process as opposed to the Drainage Act process, noting that the preliminary design report, the flood mitigation study, and associated technical studies that have been completed to date contribute to the Class EA and the environmental study report. We are also looking for MVCA's approval and support of the town's applications for federal and provincial grants for design and construction of alternatives 2 and 3, which also contribute to the ultimate goal of implementing alternative 5, which is the diversion around Harriston, the bypass diversion. And pending budget approval, we will initiate the Schedule C Class EA process for alternatives 2 and 3 based on preliminary budget estimates. We're thinking it could be around $35,000 just for engineering consulting work. And once the Class EA is approved and completed, you have 10 years to implement the project. And then we will support the town's preparation of a funding plan for the 2025 budget and beyond. And next slides is just if anyone has any questions, comments about what we've presented.
Questions for Lindsay, Chris, or Bill? Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
So you're going around Harrison with the overflow, basically, is what you're saying. Is that going to be like a river? Is that going to be drains, or how's that?
Through you, Mayor Turton. So the bypass or the diversion will just be a glorified swale, a massive swale that is still workable. That's the intention, so that it's constantly groomed. And if there is an event that exceeds the banks of a certain, let's call it a 25-year event that would exceed the banks, otherwise exceed the banks and create flooding. This is essentially, and it is lower than that actually, but it's more like the 5-year event. So anything that would exceed that, you'd see that diverting through other lands to the, I guess you call it the south of Harrison and around, and then to meet back up with Dredge Creek and come back into the river system below the town.
Yeah, and so the farmers, the land that you're using, they'll be able to work it. And they're not gonna
That would
cut
be
up.
the intention. That's right. Yes. Yeah. So it's essentially, there, like I said before, there's a lot more that has to go into the actual, there'd be a separate EA that would have to be done for that portion of the work. I would call this work that the alternative 2 and 3, like low hanging fruit in a way. Like it helps the localized flooding by doing the work downstream of the town. It opens up the river channel, it deepens it, widens the floodplain, it creates a secondary channel that, so essentially there'll be 2 rivers that will always have water in it. It'll diverge and then come back together at the 87 bridge, which sets yourself up for the ultimate event, or the ultimate design, which would be the approach of the bypass. But if that never gets done, it's still working to help and decrease flooding by 24 units in town. Whereas the bypass would remove all 200 plus properties that are currently flooded in town.
Thanks.
Councillor Podnovitz, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mayor. So you're going to channel this water around Harrison, basically, kind of contain it on the downstream side. My concern is beyond that. Like the water's still going to be, the volume of water is still going to be there. You're just going to take it around town, but you're still going to have problems downstream in other communities, other municipalities, I'm assuming, right?
Through Mayor Turton, essentially you're taking the plug of water and you're relocating the direction of it. Now we're not taking it through town, which is a lot more costly than through flooding the town than it is to. But yes, you're correct. The same amount and volume of water would be carried around the town essentially, and then it would still end up at the 87 bridge. Correct.
So it's still going to be a concern downstream for
There'll still be
neighbors.
That's correct. Yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. It's diverting it around Harrison. Essentially, it's improving the current conditions of Harrison. Yeah. If I could add, the important part about our presentation today is that this just builds on the alternatives 2 and 3 that we're working towards in this preliminary design report is just building on that eventual bypass if it were ever to go. And as Bill had mentioned, it's in the range of $35 to $40 million to do that work. So the town would need a substantial grant to complete that work, and it would be a federal or provincial funding opportunity.
Other questions? So I think I heard Councillor Elliott ask you, the swale is, that farmland will still be workable. We're not taking that prime ag out of production.
Yeah, that would be the intention. So it may restrict the type of ag that can be done on it, row crops, as opposed to, and low row crops like hay in that area. So maybe some alfalfa, that like short grass that's something that is able to be tended. You wouldn't want a cornfield there, or you could have the corn outside of that swale, large swale. But you'd have to, it would be restricted to what you could plant there, but it would still be maintained as it wouldn't be, the level of risk of it exceeding the bank would be there, but you'd want something or a pathway that could manage that water. So the type of crop would be restricted to a type of crop as well, but you could still maintain it as a ag lands. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Piggybacking off of what Ed asked, downstream, we're going to move all this water through quickly, as quick as we can, going 2 ways. How much thought have you put in to what's going to happen downstream by the 87 bridge and beyond?
So essentially the same volume is coming in.
Yeah.
It would just be diverted around, and whatever it maintains now, the flooding so that it would be backed up at the 87 bridge, but not into the town any further.
Yep.
So the theoretical models that we've generated, and I should say they're very much accurate to the overhead drone photos that were taken the day of the flood. So that was a good way to measure the extent of flooding. So the model that was created, theoretical model software that was used, mimics that in a 100-year event. So that gave us a lot of confidence that anything we're doing here to show how the water is backed up is accurate. So there may be some work as part of the long-term work and the phased approach. We may end up having to do some work to the Highway 87 bridge, which would involve the County of Wellington. But once we get there, we would do that. But at this point, to implement the phase 1 of the approach, which includes alternatives 2 and 3 to the downstream of Harriston, through the river from Arthur Street to the Arthur Street Bridge to Highway 87, you wouldn't need to touch that bridge at this point.
Okay. Clear as mud. Other questions? So how do we proceed? Annalene, do we need
So
a
there's no motion with this.
to-
This is just for information for you
Yep.
to get an opportunity to see what they're doing and to ask any questions.
Okay. If there's no further questions, then I thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I think a number of years ago, we did look at this as a serious issue, and we have taken a few steps. So it's all about where we go from here. So you got anything to add, Mike? Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to question period. And I'm going to state that the mayor, as chair of the meeting, has a duty to preserve order and maintain decorum throughout the meeting. Although council strives to hear and be responsive to residents' concerns, in order to preserve order, maintain decorum, and comply with the town's procedural bylaw, I wish to caution any participants in question period that questions that use discourteous language will not be permitted. Questions that seek policies or bylaws outside the town's jurisdiction, including policies or bylaws that might violate human rights legislation, will not be permitted. Anything that constitutes speeches or statements not in the form of question will not be permitted. Repeat questions will not be permitted, including the repetition of questions from prior meetings, and all persons shall be limited to no more than 2 questions. So, our question period is on. Any questions for question period? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to correspondence. For-
Through you.
Sorry? Yes, sir.
I'm just. My name is Stefan von Mühlen, and I have a question. What just happened from the very beginning? I'm trying to learn, and I hope this is not offensive or whatever, but I wonder how actually, where can I get information how the ruling on what rule the council work? Because what happened just now when we discussed it, page 14, Judy Dirksen, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Parovich all left, and Mr. Johnson is not here. So you had less than half of the elected council making a decision, or a discussion. And then people came in, and I believe it was Judy Dirksen was expelled too, but then she came in, but then she put a motion and forward to accept the ruling. Sorry, I don't get that. I don't understand.
Okay.
I'm trying to learn.
It's a fair question. Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask our clerk, Annalene, to answer that question. Do you have the,
Yes.
okay?
So through the Court of Revision, you either have 3 or 5 members that run the Court of Revision. It's not council members, but they are Court of Revision members. They were already through a resolution through this Mayor Turton, Deputy Mayor Anderson, and Councillor Gunson usually sit on as the 3 members. And Councillor Elliott has been on as a replacement if required. So you only need 3 members for a record of revision. So as you noticed, we made a motion to come out of council and go into court of revision. It's not a council meeting at that point in time. It is a different hearing. So that's why the other members left the table in order to be able to do that. I'm not sure what your other question was. Councillor Dirksen did not make any motions in regards to Drain 14. The motions that she may have made was that we come out of court of revision and go into committee of the whole. That has nothing to do with court of revision. It was just moving into the next portion of the council meeting.
Yeah. Could you tell me where can I look this up? Like, I really try to understand how this ruling works, how the democracy here in Canada actually works. Like, I have a very good understanding how it works in my home place, but I really have a hard time to understand some of this. And I really would like to understand this a lot better. It probably would help me to understand how some of those rulings come about.
So through Mayor Turton, it's through the Ontario Drainage Act. And you can look it up online. It is an older act, but that is what we are bound to use for our
I'm
drainage.
even not on internet.
Yep, if you wanted to come in someday, I can get that information for you.
I will. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Turton and Council. I was really impressed about that last presentation about the reversion of the floodplains. I know the town of Minto's been dealing with that for many, many, many years. And I had a quick question as I was sitting there. Did the engineering proposal ever look at a water retention pond just east of the blind line rather than going through the cost of digging in a rerouted overflow? That the water would be retained just east of the blind line and then it would be released as accordingly to prevent the flow. I think a project like that would be a lot less expensive just without going through the engineering process. I don't know, was that ever looked at?
Yes, sir, it was looked at. Chris, would you or Lindsay go to the mic and answer that, please? Thank you. This is overtime, right?
That's okay. Through your Mayor Turner, and thanks, Dave, for the question. It was looked at, as Bill mentioned previous, which we couldn't go through the entire flood mitigation report, but out of there was about 13 alternatives as a whole that were looked at. The amount of water that has to be held back is you'd need to build a dam, essentially. It's a massive amount, and it would basically flood it would flood a lot of properties within Wellington North even. So that was looked at as one of the options previous to the shortlisted 5. And if you want, I can find that information and we can go through it together. But I'm happy to do that. But that was that was one of when Steve Jackson and the MVCA was more involved on that end. Probably in 2018, 2019, that was one of the first options looked at because looking at it, the blind line is a nice dam kind of, and it does act as a way to hold back water. But the amount of water as it would accumulate over time would be such an order of magnitude that you'd essentially have to build a dam for that water to be held back.
That answer your question, Councillor Anderson? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Mr. Clark. Okay, so we're moving on to correspondence received for information or required direction of council. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council received the correspondence as information. 3 items on our agenda tonight. First one being the newsletter. And the second was the MCTO, and the third one was the wild animal protection. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull? Thanks a lot, Triton Engineering. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
So the animal protection resolution was presented at AMO. They had a group there presenting. And I wasn't aware at the time that there wasn't a provincial ruling about this. I know that most municipalities have a ruling about exotic animals. Some of the information they had was pretty startling. The number of animals that are being raised, wild animals that are being raised in captivity. And I know we recounted an episode to them where David and I were out getting planter boxes and something caught my eye and turned my head. And there was a couple of cougars in cages. And on the other side of the field were some monkeys, including an orangutan, out in the middle of Arthur Township. And you're going, what on earth are they doing out here? So apparently this is a big issue, and they would like to move for the province to have a standard that goes across the entire province to prevent the keeping and raising of wild animals in inappropriate conditions. So I said I would bring it forward.
Is there something that we want to do about it? Do you want
There is a resolution that was included
okay.
that we would just forward on to other communities and send off to the, I have to pull it up right here, but it was in the package.
Through you, Mayor Turton, I'm just looking at it, the resolution now. And I know that there are some things in there that they talk about giving recent incidences and such that we do not currently have within the town of Minto. So we wouldn't want to leave that portion of it in if we want to support it.
You'd have to take that out. There were some revisions that would have to be made.
Yeah.
Do you want to put that in the form of a motion, Deputy Mayor Anderson, that we pull that one and have our staff have a look at it?
Sure, that would be great.
Can we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Elliott. So no further questions on that. I'm going to call the question on the exotic animals one. All in favor of pulling that and having our staff have a look at it? And then we'll pass the original resolution to accept the correspondence. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on into committee minutes. I'm going to ask Councillor Dirksen to give us an update on the Economic Development and Planning meeting from September 5th.
Thank you, Mayor Turton. Yes, as you said, we had our meeting on the 5th of September. Prior to the meeting, we toured TG Minto. As you know, there are certain councillors who are appointed to the Economic Development and Planning Committee meeting, but all council is invited to the tour. And so Councillor Elliott joined us in Palmerston, so that was great. Had a great tour there. They're always very welcoming, and it's been interesting over the years watching the improvements, that's for sure. I know you have the minutes in front of you, so I just kind of go through, hit the highlights. We had Cameron Green there from Whiteman Capital Projects, bringing an update on some work being done in Minto. Building Inspector Wes Graham provided an update on the town of Minto building statistics. Amy Heimiller provided an update on the local real estate market. Charlene, and I never say her name right, Hoffbauer, presented on the local labor market and had some interesting statistics there as well. And we also looked at the Economic Development Master Plan and the implementation plans and gave some suggestions, recommendations to the staff on priorities from the short and long-term goals. And Caitlin Turton shared that Launchit has some exciting training sessions coming up that I'm sure will be well attended and appreciated. And then we ratified some community improvement grant and a couple of storefront accessory grants. And so our next meeting is on the 5th of December. That's when it's scheduled for. And we have a corporate call to Trust Corps, and that's at 1:30 in the afternoon. So if anyone is able to join us, that would be great. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Am I doing the recommendation?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, if you don't mind.
All right. I have a recommendation here moved by Councillor Podnowitz and seconded by Councillor Zimmerman that Council of the Town of Minto receives the Economic Development and Planning Committee meeting minutes of September 5th, 2024 for information and approves any recommendations contained therein. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. I'll pass the chair back to
Okay, so we have no staff reports. And we're now into announcements. Councillor Dirksen, would you mind starting?
Yes. Well, we had the Harrison Minto Fall Fair last weekend. Probably had some of the best weather ever. So it was great to have a summer fair in September. And yeah, everybody seemed to be having a great time. Tons and tons of volunteers put that program together. So as they do for lots of other events in Minto, of course. But anyways, kudos to all of them for doing such a great job.
Thank you. Councillor Zimmerman?
Did I steal yours?
No, that was good. Yeah, I got a couple here tonight. Last night, actually, we had a Clifford Connect Steering Committee meeting up in Clifford. And the Beautification Committee came up with a brainstorm to encourage, now this is just residents in Clifford, encourage them to decorate their homes for the upcoming Halloween season. It's a bit of a challenge. Anybody wishing to be included in judging need to register their home address on the Clifford Connect's website, which is going to be available starting September 20th. You can get all the information there. There's going to be prizes awarded for, I missed one part here. The theme is called Creatures of Clifford. And the goal is decorate your house with as many creatures and spooky things and lights and sound. So there's most prizes for the most creatures, the most creative display, and the best lighting and sound use. Judging is going to take place from October 25th to the 28th, and prizes will be handed out on October 30th. And we'll get a few more details at next council meeting. And then secondly, as everyone around here anyway is aware, Treasurer Gordon Duff and myself, we're part of a group of people, we call ourselves the Tibidale Historical Society. And our goal was to preserve some key moments in history, showcasing through a picture display the importance Tibidale held for the development of Minto as we know it today. So I'm happy to announce that our project has been completed. And next Wednesday, September 25th at 4 p.m. in the south side parking lot of the Tibidale truck stop, everyone is invited for the grand opening and unveiling. And that's that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zimmerman. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Just a couple of things. It's a busy time of year. So Culture Days are on in September. If you go to the town website, there's a list of all of the events that are happening, but we're hosting Apples and Astronomy for I think our 8th year in a row out at the farm. Or we'll have a telescope there. We'll have some apple cider and some sort of treats. Hasn't been decided yet who's baking them or what we're baking, but we'll have something. And all are welcome. Come on out, we'll have a bonfire. And on the 25th is the Indigenous event. People are reminded to get their tickets. It's happening at the arena in Harrison. And tickets can be purchased at the hardware store or online or a multitude of different spots. And you get to try sweet grass ice cream. But just a note to people to get involved in all of the events that are happening. Lots going on.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. Just to add to that Truth and Reconciliation evening, there's only a certain number of tickets available because of the ice cream. So we need people to get their tickets early. So if we need more ice cream, we can likely get it. Second thing, and I'm not sure if I maybe start over there, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you so much. I got a couple of things. Firstly, the Lions Club in Palmerston held their 85th anniversary, and the mayor was there, spoke very well on behalf of our council and behalf of the town. Jim Henderson, I don't know whether everybody knows Jim. Ken used to be the a big lion, his dad. And we listened to Jim, and he gave a phenomenal history of what's happening with our, what happened over the years, detail after detail after detail of what the Lions Club have done in Palmerston. It was quite amazing, and the meal was fantastic. And that's all I have to say about that. Today, I was on a Zoom meeting with our fellow OSM board, and we had Minister Doug Downey there, and we talked about Landlord-Tenant Act and what's going on with that, the difficulties with landlords. Was removing tenants was the biggest thing. It's not so much the tenants, it's the landlords that are having the problems. We were talking about many farmers, for example, have houses when they buy farms, they rent them to tenants, and the tenants turn out to be bad, and they can't get rid of them. It takes them 2 or 3 years to get rid of them. They won't pay their rent. So now we're losing those farmhouses because farmers are buying them, not going to bother trying to rent them anymore, just tear them down. So we're losing houses that way. He was also saying that you can appeal when you have a bad tenant. And now I think before you can get in, and they've lowered it to 6 to 8 weeks before you can get a hearing. It used to be a long, long time. It used to be 4 or 5 months. So they lowered that, and they're dealing with 500 a week. And so it's quite a problem, but they are dealing with it, and they will assess it. It's been quite an improvement in what it would be. And if you had quite an emergency and you needed to get rid of somebody because of a problem or safety or whatever, you can apply on an emergency basis, and probably they would upgrade that and put you in a lot earlier. So it was very interesting. He brought a lot of information to our OSM and information we can bring back to our towns. And I thank him for that. Thanks.
Councillor Gunson. Sorry, Councillor Panovitz.
I have nothing to share tonight.
Pardon me. Yeah, I would just like to add as well to Councillor Elliott. It was an amazing evening. 85 years. Palmerston Lions first started in, I think, 1939, and then the number of events and the amount of money and that was raised by a group of people in Palmerston. It was absolutely staggering, and Jim Henderson did a great job. Just wish that had been taped. Possibly it was, Ron?
We actually have a copy of his speech, and if you check with Dave Wilson, he could probably get that to you.
No, it was amazing. So
Yeah.
I mean, on behalf of council, certainly like to offer our congratulations. And I mean, I did on Saturday night, but again, that's pretty amazing. We are very lucky in this town to have volunteers and service groups raising money for equipment. And it's not just equipment, it's not arenas and ballparks and all the other stuff. It's what they do for people behind the scenes. So it's pretty amazing. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the Committee of the Whole convenes in regular council. All in favor of the motion? Next is notice of motions. I've got a notice of motion dated, it's a notice of motion dated September 17th, moved by Mayor Turton, that the Council of the Town of Minto review the 2025 council meeting schedule set out August 13th, 2024, and consider changes to the starting time of the council meetings.
Through you, Mayor Turton, you will provide me with that written notice, and it can be considered at the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Clerk McRobb. So we're moving along here. If there's no other notices of motion, resolution moved by Councillor Potnovich, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the Council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in the Committee of the Whole. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Bylaws. Moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaw 2024-050 to confirm the actions of the Council of the Corporation, the Town of Minto, respecting a meeting held September 17th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed in open council and sealed to seal the corporation. All in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you. Resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaw 2024-050 that bylaw 2024-050 to confirm the actions, council, the corporation, the town of Minto.
I believe that might be bylaw 051 through
Okay.
Mayor Turton.
051. So let me start again. Moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaw 2024-051 to confirm the actions of the council of the corporation, town of Minto, respecting a meeting held September 17th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time and passed in open council, sealed to seal the corporation. All in favor of that motion? And the adjournment resolution moved by Councillor Potvin, second by Councillor Elliott, that the council of town of Minto adjourns to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor of that motion? Thank you very much.